Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Develops Live, the session of Adobe I powered AEM as a cloud service assets export. My name is Calvin Zhu. I'm a principal architect of Adobe Consulting Service. I'm specialized in AEM cloud service, and Adobe I/O. Along with me is Kanika Gara. You want to give yourself introduction, Kanika?
Thank you, Kevin. This is Kanika Gera, this side, a senior product manager for what you hear as Adobe I/O or the Adobe Developer Services. And today, I think we're going to be talking about all the exciting stuff you've heard probably this morning, which is the AEM as a cloud service, asset exposed use case introduction, which would be done by Kevin. I will walk you through the app builder components about events and runtime. Kevin's going to talk through the IO implementation, and we'll go through a quick demo.
Thank you, Kanika, for the introduction for the agenda. Let's just dive into it. Let's quickly get into the intro of this use case, AEM as a cloud service assets export. I think as AEM, either AEM developer or AEM architect, people are familiar with the ways how to share or distribute assets from AEM, a cloud service. From a B2C perspective, a client or user can get into AEM to directly download or even access assets through HTTP access, or you can use the asset link share, or you can use brand portal or asset share commons, so the external apps, add-ons that can be deployed into AEM for sharing the assets. From a B2B perspective, AEM provides a header for application called the Asset Selector. But when it really comes to app-to-app integration, especially for headless use cases, for example, if you wanted to export any assets to external cloud storage, Azure, S3, FTP, or third-party systems like PIM, Campaign, and Marketo, you have to do this through a custom solution, right? And here is a typical asset export use case. Upon assets publishing, assets original rendition, or along with other renditions, should be published and exported into external Azure storage or a third-party system such as Marketo, which is all driven by an export destination property that you can define in assets metadata, something like that, like the screenshot I pasted in below. Of course, this is just one way of representing the use. In reality, the use case can be varied based on different export destinations. For example, to a S3 bucket, a Google bucket, a FTP endpoint, a PIM system, all through different ways of triggering the export, not necessarily just by the publishing event properties, right? Different from case to case, but scenarios, right? To the publish event, export the assets that is to be exported. So in a traditional implementation, you can implement a custom agent that is with a export, and then that with a custom application that pushes as binary into third party when the publishing event happens, right? But custom replication agent is no longer being supported in AEM's cloud service. The Sling event, like the publishing event, then trigger a Sling job that does the export as well. Yes, probably can do that, but you must be very careful to implement such a job in AEM cloud service. Especially, you have to keep those process and jobs to be small due to the cloud native that AEM pods can be scaled up and scaled down at any given time. Otherwise, you're probably going to fall into some common pitfalls, like you're going to have a long-running jobs or with outgoing HTTP connections that cause timeout. Also, sometimes you may use some deprecated API, for example, asset.original.get. Asset.get original.get stream. Those are not supported anymore in the AEM cloud service world. So we are on cloud right now. So why the question is, why does it have to be in AEM, right? So in some circumstances, those processes or jobs really can be offloaded as long as AEM events can be emitted and captured externally. So the question is where to offload those processes or jobs and how to capture those events. So Adobe I/O as a serverless platform or Adobe App Builder can really bridge the gap because that is a cloud native and scalable event, and it is event and microservice driven. Implementing that resource consuming on site, nice on AEMs. Kind of pass kind of that's introduction about Adobe I/O runtime App Builder thing.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Kevin. So earlier this morning, App Builder GA was announced. I don't know how many of you got a chance to look at that session, but it talks about how App Builder is a complete framework that would enable all the enterprise developers to build and extend and also deploy all the Adobe Experience Cloud solutions on top of the Adobe infrastructure. So App Builder, if you see in the slide, is actually leveraging all the modern technologies like Jamstack, serverless computing, Node, and is also ensuring best practices with building applications. You look at the diagram, you would see custom events, which are event-driven architectures, microservices for cloud services, continuous integrations, as well as delivery. What I'm going to be focusing on today is runtime, which you see on the right-hand side, and custom events. Kevin, can we please go to the next slide? Thank you. So runtimes are Adobe's serverless platform that would allow you to quickly deploy your custom code and respond to events and execute all your functions right in the cloud. And for this, we are not asking you to do any server setup. It is all at Adobe's infrastructure. So for a simple understanding, while I dive in more about events and runtime in the slides coming ahead, there's this diagram of this car. And this car is the whole framework, which is called the App Builder. Cloud-native applications. So we're considering App Builder as a car, runtime as an engine of this car, which is on the brain that is going to be our serverless platform. And events are going to be a function or as a feature of this particular car. Next slide, please. So over the last several years, has been a lot of revolution. Many organizations are becoming more and more real time. They want to respond to events that are happening almost at the near real time. And this kind of needs have actually given the birth to the event-driven thinking. With this event-driven thinking, Adobe offers event-driven architecture in terms of Adobe I events, where all these events trigger and communicate with the decoupled services. And all of this are actually built within the microservices. Now, IO events, what it does is going to help you ingest all these events that are coming from various Adobe Cloud or Adobe, I would say, products. And then you can have them integrated or create integrations within your platform to respond to any specific external defined condition that is happening. With events, you can consume or you can subscribe. We have it works on a PubSub model. You can listen and react using them, using their own terms. We are delivering and almost near real-time customer experiences. And we also have functions and sequences, which work seamlessly between runtime and events. Next slide, please. Now, while IO events offer the product events, with the App Builder, we have this new feature of custom IO events. So what custom IO events does is it enables all our third-party developers to emit custom events, cloud-native, integrations or applications. So for example, I would talk about in this scenario particularly, you have an app and you want that app to send or generate some kind of custom events or some kind of events that talks to the Adobe services. That happens in a bi-directional flow over here. And it again, the payload for these cloud IO events specifically is on open event specification, which is called the cloud events format, which is globally accepted and an open standard for all the EDAs. So event delivery here is simple. We follow our principle of delivering near real-time responses, and it also helps on building in all the cloud native applications. So this comes with an opportunity for to make all your applications talk. Next slide, please, Kevin. Now we come to Runtime. As I mentioned before, Runtime is our serverless platform, and Apache OpenWhisk where you have no server setup required at your end. Now, how Runtime comes into a better fit or a picture for your serverless need is because we have optimized Runtime to connect to Adobe's ecosystem for all the APIs, events, and services. So it's going to be from a developer experience side, the easiest and most performant way within, when you're working with all the Adobe products and services. From here, I'm not going to dive in a little more deep, but in case you have any further questions, please feel free to put it on the chat. Kevin, handing it back over to you so that Kevin can walk us through on how the app builder framework has been used by AEM as a cloud service for the asset export service they have.
Thank you, Kanika. Thank you. Very, very good. Very good introduction of Adobe I/O and the app builder. Let's come back to the use case I introduced from the very beginning, right? Back to the use case of how AEM assets can be exported, powered by Adobe I/O. Let's first take a look how AEM assets in a use case in a fashion. Actually, we call the web mechanic by I/O events. When it's published from to publisher, the published event can be over to a I/O event, and gets notified, and the runtime is registered as the event also load to the runtime action called as action in very secure manner. Then export can the payload as the reference assets. It's a callback to a relevant metadata. For our case, we need to get destination. We can export multiple to know that should be going Azure store or Marketo or action in the assets and or additional rendition author into the system based on the destination metadata we got from AEM author. So as you can see, the whole process, the whole event-driven flow happens almost in real time. As soon as the asset is published from AEM author, the asset's binary or rendition is immediately ingested into the downstream system. Now let's take a little bit closer look into with a little bit more technical details. First of all, to set this up, you need to install a package called Event Proxy. That is to map or register any AEM events into I/O events. Once everything is configured properly, the following events will be mapped and registered out of box. For example, assets created, assets deleted, pages created, pages updated. For our use case, we need to register the asset. The event is called assets published. It is not one of the out-of-box events, but you can follow a document. This is also will be a reference in the last slide of this deck. you can follow a document to register custom AEMaaCS Cloud Service I/O event. So in general, any OSGI or Sling-based AEM events can be mapped or registered into I/O events. This is one of the example of how the I/O event payload looks like. You can tell there are the type of the event, which is a published event. Then you can see there's a type of the object, which is the AEM assets. Also, you have the asset name, you have the asset path, and you have the format. So with those this payload, you can get a reference of that asset, and then you do whatever you want by making call back to AEM, right? The second part is to use Adobe App Builder, or what do we call the Project Firefly in the past. Use that CLI to bootstrap your runtime action as a headless application. Then you literally can start your development just with literally just a few steps. You can use AIO app initial to start a Node.js application, and hook up with all existing JDK, not JDK, I mean all the Node.js SDKs. Also there are SDKs provided by App Builder. You can use those to start to wire up your application. This is just a one quick code snippet showing you how when the assets publish event can be handled in I/O runtime as a action. Basically, you can tell first it retrieves the event payload and it gets the content paths from the event. Evaluate if it is from /content/dam, that means it's an asset. Then you make a callback to AEM to get the asset metadata. Based on the export destination, you can start ingest your assets into the relevant destination, right? So this is a very quick code snippet and showing you how easy you can start building your runtime action to handle those I/O events. Once the runtime action is deployed into I/O runtime, also your AEM events is mapped into I/O events, then you can start to hook them up, right? This screenshot it's captured from Adobe I/O console. Basically tells you assets published events is subscribed, and the event delivery method is the what do we call it? The real-time exporter, which is the runtime action that we deployed. That's pretty much it. After that, you once the event is hooked up with a runtime action, you can just start to do some testing work. So this is one way to do the AEM assets exports through a webhook. For some circumstances, assets export needs to be managed in a batched version fashion, right, or asynchronously, especially when assets need to be exported in a bulk at a time. In that scenario, Adobe I/O's another mechanism called the journaling probably is the way you should look into. Comparing to webhook, which is a real-time event push model, right? Whenever the AEM event is emitted, it is pushing into the webhook. Which is a push model. Journaling is more of a pull model that it is up to you how to consume those events from the journal. So in that diagram, you can see when either one or multiple assets are published from AEM author to publisher, the bulk events, the assets published events are sent to I/O events. And those events are persisted in the Adobe I/O's journal. And your action can be configured as a scheduler or cron job, then can fetch those events from the journal in a regular basis and start to process them. Since it is repetitive kind of action, for the next action to run to be able to pick up where it left off, we are using a one open SDK provided by Firefly or Project Firefly or app builder. It's called AIO Lib State. This is actually comes with Adobe App Builder as an open source library. This is utilized to store the last position of that event that had been reached from the journal. So for each event that is fetched, a similar to the webhook, right? The action, the export action, gonna get the assets reference and then make a call back to AEM author to get the metadata, and eventually fetch the binary or the rendition of that asset and start to ingest them into the downstream system. For journaling, it's still within the Adobe I/O console. You don't necessarily need to hook up with a webhook, right? What you need is only the journaling unique API endpoint, which is presented in your runtime project. Whenever you register the I/O event, it will generate a journaling unique API endpoint for you to consume. This is all you need, right? Basically, you can use that to start a query, iterate through all the events that has been published from the AEM. This is a quick code snippet, and it tells you how the events are fetched from journaling and stored in the AIO state client. That you can use that to persist the position of the event. So later, when the scheduler is running the next time, it can use that to pick up the last position of the event. They can continuously run that scheduler to do the batch export. Okay, with all things that covered in a theoretical manner, I think it is time to show some demo. You can let me know if you're seeing my video screen.
Yes,
it's good.
Okay. Good.
Let's get started. It's a pre-recorded demo, but I will just describe along with it. So we start from the Adobe I/O console. This is where you can see the assets published event is being configured from AEM, and this is the runtime action that we deployed into I/O as a real-time exporter, as a webhook.
Kevin, if you don't mind, can we just the video?
That's a good question. Let me see if I can.
And welcome to the world of virtual conferences.
Still a little bit too small, you think?
Should be good.
That's the best I can do right now. Is that okay? Is that too small to you? Okay, so let's head over to AEM Cloud Service. Let's just pick a couple of assets and settings the export destination. One is sent over to Marketo. The other one is we send over to Azure Blob Store. Gonna save it. Yeah. Then let's do a quick publish. So the assets are published from AEM author to publisher. Let's go back to the I/O console. Within a few seconds, you should be able to see those two events are reflected in the debug tracing console. And you can see the assets that we just targeted to publish is this one, yeah. Then let's go to Marketo. This folder from Marketo is the one that is supposed to host all the asset that is being published from AEM. Let's do a sort. And you can see this one is being published from AEM that is also ingested into Marketo. Similarly, we go to Azure Storage Explorer. You can see the other assets being published, also being ingested into Azure Blob Store. Yep. This really concludes the real-time demo use case. Now we are head over to the journaling demo. The second part, if you want to do a synchronous AEMaaCS export, how do we leverage the journaling API endpoint? Let's still head over to the I/O console. Just notice the journaling unique API. That's the one that we're gonna use to evaluate the journaling. One point I wanted to raise is since it's a scheduler, it's very hard to demo because we don't want this to be run over and over again, and all of a sudden all the assets being handled. So I just temporarily disabled the scheduler within I/O action. But in the reality, this journaling API action should be called in a regular basis through what do we call a trigger based on rules. That is can be defined I/O action as a cron job, right? So temporarily, I just had disabled it. I would be able to demo this use case using a manual way to show how it works. So let's again head over to AEM as cloud service. Good. And let's set one of them to be exported to Azure. And the other one to be exported into Marketo. Then let's do a quick publish as well. Okay, so here we are already done with the publishing. Of course, those two events won't be handled until the next run of the scheduler, right? Since we turned off the scheduler, let's head over to the Postman. I'm going to show a couple of API endpoints. One of them is to show the AIO lib state where we keep all the last position of the events. The other one is I'm going to manually trigger that runtime action to pick up those events, and that event will push those assets into the destinations. So this is one of the API endpoint from our runtime that keeps the last position of that event. We use that as a position to query the event journal API that we got from I/O console. Use a since parameter. So this will tell you. Remember, we published two assets in the real-time use case. Another two assets in the journal use case. There should be 4 events showed up in the event journal. So you can keep using the last position of that event to iterate through those events in the journal. So this is the one that we just published through the journal folder, and we can keep going, getting those last position, and copy paste into the parameter, the since parameter of that journal API to fetch all those events. So this is the second image that we published from AEM. And this should be the last one that we did, right? So nothing is fetched after that, which means there's no upcoming events. So we recorded the 4 events. Now we are head over to the execution of that I/O runtime action that's supposed to be triggered through a cron job or scheduler. Now we just manually trigger it by making the call explicitly to that API point, the runtime action point. So we fetched 4 events. The 2 events are from the real-time use case. The other 2 is actually from the journal use case. Similarly, we go to the Marketo. We are seeing this one is being published from the journal the folder. And similarly, we go back to the Azure Storage Explorer. You already seen the journal content folder being generated in the Azure Blob Store, and the hiking campaign.jpg is also being published through the journal use case action. All right, so that's pretty much it to conclude our session. We are right on time. I'm not sure if we have any questions, but I think we don't have too much time left, right, to do any Q&A. Kanika?
That's right, Kevin. In case there are any questions, Amol posted a link for the Experience League blogs. Please feel free to put your questions there. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for attending this session. Very glad to see you all here, and we are looking forward to you guys start jumping into the Adobe I/O or App Builder implementation with AEM. Thank you all.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.